with legendary horseman and U.S. show jumping team chef to keep George Morris. George recently approached us with his frustration in the direction that the sport is going here in our country. Welcome, George, and thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks, Jimmy.
George, I know one of the things you're a little concerned about is the lowering of standard at the American horse shows here in our country. That's also a top priority for the North American Riders Group. Can you explain that a little bit, please?
Well, this country being an outpost of equestrianism is a chicken and an egg, a chicken and an egg, a chicken and an egg. But behind that, we have to remember we have a very, very old tradition of equestrian sport at the Olympic level. I mean, it's over 100 years old. We've had great success for that length of time internally. Our Fort Riley cavalry officers were fabulous horsemen, won medals at the games. They, through our Jimmy Williams, Gordon Wright, Bill Steinkraus, Cappy Smith, that came out of Fort Riley, were our great mentors and trainers that perpetuated the system. So we mustn't think of ourselves getting painted into a third world country status, which is happening. That specific question of the horse show lowering their standards. First, we had our indoor circuit in the 50s, 60s, even up to the early 80s, which was the best in the world. The Europeans thought Madison Square Garden was the best indoor show in the world. I heard it many times. Harrisburg, Washington, Toronto were at the top of the pile. The best teams came to Europe. The jumps were big. The competition was great. And that was a 6-week interaction to see where we stood against the Europeans, be it indoors. Since then, I always say the tipping point was the mid-'80s. The tipping point of our horsemanship, our outsourcing to buy horses, of which I was very early on partly to fault, the outsourcing of horse shows, the lowering a standard of horse shows. And I always found in my life, if I lowered one standard, like, oh, my boots don't have to get done tonight, I'll do them tomorrow, the next night, a standard over here slips. Well, the kids at home can ride in jeans and chaps and paddock boots. Then the tack doesn't get cleaned as well. So the horse shows are a little a result of the chicken and the egg. As the horse shows deteriorated, I think it started with the indoor circuit. And that was hurt partly by our great Florida circuit, because Florida in the 60s came up, and Michael Matz and people decided to even stop going to the indoors. But the indoor shows didn't hold up themselves. I always believe the buck stops with you. You know, if our indoor shows had, say, been a Stuttgart or a Frankfurt, or kept upping the quality, it's not just about money. If they'd kept upping the quality, not only would those people kept coming, because the best of the Europeans after the war and before the war all came, but that would also set the tone for us. So it's the chicken and the egg. As those standards lowered, people that had ambition, like McLean, like Murray and his daughter, like BZ, like Laura Kraut, they're going to go where it's the best. But the buck stops with us.
You know, I think even the outdoor shows, I think, you know, some of the organizers really need to get to Europe and see the Aachen. You know, I know when I went to Aachen, I went to watch a couple times, and then I got the chance to ride there, and it's a totally different sport. The way they do it there is unbelievable, and I think maybe some of our organizers here really need to go and see and get with the organizers there and see what it's all about and see what we need to do to get back to those standards. Because I remember back in the old days when I first started doing this, ours were that good, and we've definitely let it slip.
Oh, Lake Placid, Newport, Valley Forge, Devon, C.W. Post, they're Olympic courses.
I remember you mentioned Devon, and we used to run the Gold Cup at Devon, And I remember when I would be thinking about going to Europe to buy horses, and I watched the Grand Prix at Devon, and I watched the Gold Cup at Devon one year, and there was a triple combination, and I thought to myself while I was in Europe, as I was trying horses, can this horse jump that triple combination at the Gold Cup? And nowadays, it's not really like that. You know, the standard has definitely dropped.
But see, it perpetuates itself. Just what I said, it perpetuates itself, it drops. People, I don't say leave, they flee. And they flee, it drops more because they're less. So it perpetuates itself, but I think it starts here. I think it starts if you have 6 entries at Devon or wherever you're talking about. You have it proper schooling ring, proper fences, proper footing. It's all A+, not cater it down. And those people will say, listen, you know, Europe's a big expanse. It's hard to get there. Calgary's very far. We heard Devon was fantastic. We heard Old Salem was fantastic. It starts with us.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the globalization of competitive marketship, how it pertains to the students and the horses here in our country?
Calypso was the big tipping point. Once Calypso got her, he was so cute, he was so fabulous, he was so careful, he had scope to burn, he was so fast, he won everything. Everybody in America wanted Calypso. And just at that time, the racetrack, to get to the racetrack was drying up a little bit, soundness, more and more tracks, but fewer and fewer types of tracks. So people right then started, in the late 70s, early, starting to go to Europe, which turned into flocking to Europe. After that, our horse dealers died. Not David Hopper hung in there with Dutch horses. Irish Showman packed it in. Gary up in Washington. All these great horse dealers that we had, within 5 or 10 years, packed it in because there was no contest to pick horses off the track or under rocks out here that we used to love to do, and lots of them turned out to be Idle Dice and Sloopy. You know, you go over there as more than I do. You get off the airplane, you can see till you drop 24/7 horses jumping. Horses jumping. If you have the energy, they'll show them to you all night long. You can see horses jumping and never ending. Country, 24/7. So it's first of all a sexy sell to go to Europe. Oh, I'm going to Europe to buy a horse. Even for me, oh, I'm getting on the airplane, I'm going to Gerhard Edders, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. I mean, it's a sexy sell trip, plus it's a practical trip. So that's what happened, and unfortunately it happened in such a tsunami so quickly that it buried our dealers and our internal sources. Now, having said that, this again I think we could fix, but it would take a very big effort now.
George, you've answered the first part of my question when we talked about outsourcing when it comes to buying horses in Europe. How do you feel about losing some of our owners and our sponsors to buying horses for the European riders? It seemed like that's really been a problem in our country.
What it comes down to, it's not so much, patriotism isn't what it used to be because nationalism is not what it used to be. But it's a friend thing. Some kid comes over here and starts working under somebody at a stable. They do well, they help the children, they tend the garden, they do the farm, they do cartwheels. Those owners tend to like them. They're like sons. Well, very soon that son has nothing, has had in his whole life nothing, and this person that they've done a lot for likes them, Irish, Argentinian, Yugoslavian, doesn't matter. Well, we're going to back you to the Olympics. So there's lots of answers. I'm not saying I like it, but I say I totally understand it. I'm not saying I'm applauding it, but I totally understand why it's happening. And I think that's very, very difficult for somebody to tell people how to spend their money, to tell people who they like, to tell people who they should back. But again, I think that's our fault. I think we have to have a better product.
You know, George, we've talked for a little while here. We've touched many subjects. You know, I think one thing we really need to talk about is horsemanship. You and I spoke earlier at the horse show. Basically, nowadays, anybody just becomes a trainer. And I think horsemanship has really slipped. As you mentioned, Beasy, there's Beasy and McLean and Laura Crowd and some of those top riders that really are top horsemen. But I think in general, you know, maybe some of the younger trainers coming along are really letting that horsemanship slip. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I am disappointed. I grew up in an era with Victor Hugo Vidal, Ronnie Much, Bill Steinkraus. They were curious. They were curious. They read books, especially Billy and I read every book we get our hands on. We would watch when Bert, way before he got on the team, Bert and Gabor Voltenia would go to the shows in Oxbridge, Fairfield, and had Cavaletti work, snaffles, dressage. We'd never seen it before. You know, we were young, not even professionals. There was a curiosity of better, of training better. Just to give these professionals a break, I think they're so overswamped. Firstly, with paying the bills, and second, with the numbers. I had a factory. I know what a factory was like, but I was very careful to compartmentalize my factory. I had Karen Healy, I had Frank and Bill, I had Kathy, I had Jeff Cook and Chris. I was very careful so my compartment of international jumping was kept correct. And that is the only way that can work. You can't be out here, I'm very sorry, I don't care who it is. You can't be out here, even if you have some assistant, you're, at the end of the day, they're responsible for the small junior, the older amateur hunter, the first year green horse, the 20 in the middle that you have, the limit equitation, and even have a hope. There's no way that you could cater to big jumpers. Right. So I think it's a two-way thing. I think our professionals have let themselves down in not studying, not reading, not going to, if Stefan's here giving a clinic, not go to him. If Jessica comes down for 3 days. At Hunterdon, we're constantly having Jessica, Jack LeGoff, Gunnar Ostergaard, you might know. Every month I had them in my stable. But it was the big picture. I think we are seeing, I think we're looking this way. We're not looking this way. The professionals. The culture's gotten lower, sloppier standards. I make good money. I'm a believer, and I don't give things for nothing. I don't believe in that. I've always had a pretty good business. I'm not rich, but I'm not poor. I never, to my recollection, can ever think of a lesson or a customer or a situation where I put the money ahead of what I believed in the sport.
George, I really want to thank you for taking this time with us today. You know, I know you've got a very busy schedule, but you know we've got a lot of riders here. We've got the best riders in the United States. We've got owners watching this. What is the one message you would really want to leave our owners and our riders with?
My message would be that we have a limited mentality with the professionals here. Once you're good at 3-6, I want those people to say, listen, let's get into the 100 Derby division or low jumper divisions with some people. Let's shoot this way. Not year after year after year be in the same place at the same time. I call that limited. And I blame most of the problems we're talking about today. The buck stops not with George, the buck stops with George and all of us. We have to up the ante. We have to raise our standards. Paul Schockenmiller every week has a dressage trainer there. I know when Frankie, Otto, and Ludwig were there, every week came to that stable, just as an example of being less limited. And I think that's where we're painting ourselves in, is limited, and the other competition, which is right close to us across the pond, is right close to us now. Lots of those aren't limited. And that's the competitive nature of people.
So basically, your last message is the same message we started with.
Yes, yes.